Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Rice from Crime Talk, and thanks for watching. Let's get right to the docket because it is a busy docket. First, Chad Daybell says not guilty. Not really. Next on the docket, the ex-police officer in Atlanta who shot Rayshard Brooks had a previous use of force incident. Third, a change is coming to law enforcement. Is it really what people want? Fourth, a gruesome story from Tallahassee, Florida. Fifth, follow up on a case that we covered out of Oregon back in January. And finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Rice from Crime Talk, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already done so, ask you that you hit that like button, hit that little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live, and as always, leave us a comment below about what we talk about here today. Now, it's Tuesday night. We are going to go live tonight on YouTube and Facebook. 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And then after that, for our Patreon members, we will have a live session. So join us. If you haven't joined Patreon, join us as well so that you can get that link and have our somewhat private conversation versus, I think last time we had some 5,000 people asking questions. So do it, don't delay. First on the docket, Chad Daybell says not guilty. Well, kind of, but not really. As most people now know, Chad Daybell is married to Lori Vallow. They got married some 2 weeks after Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy, passed away somewhat unexpectedly. An autopsy was not performed at that time per his request. Her body has since been exhumed. An autopsy was done. They've done what they could do. Apparently, the body is back in the grave. However, the police are still investigating Chad as it relates to the death of his wife, Tammy. Last Monday, he gets arrested. They find remains, and it's been confirmed as of Saturday, of that of JJ and Ty Lee, the children of Lori Vallow, who've been missing basically since September of last year. Lori Vallow remains in custody on child abandonment charges. She goes to preliminary hearing next week. Chad Daybell had an initial advisement on Tuesday. Chad Daybell is set for a preliminary hearing on July 1st and 2nd in just a couple of weeks. Now, Chad Daybell has retained an attorney by the name of John Pryor. John Pryor initiated 2 filings. One is a notice of appearance, request for pretrial, request for jury trial, plea of not guilty. Really what this is an official entry of appearance, and is kind of a CYA that if he had not entered a plea of not guilty, that he would request that take place now. Not going to happen. What's the significance of that? Once the information, a criminal information is filed, which would take place after the preliminary hearing, an arraignment would take place. At that point, 180 days for the people of the state of Idaho to get Mr. Daybell to trial. The fact that he said he wants to enter a plea of not guilty right now, from my reading of Idaho law, is really insignificant and doesn't mean anything. This frankly looks like a general entry of appearance, waiver arraignment, plea of not guilty for a misdemeanor case, but we're talking a felony case. So that filing is somewhat premature. Assuming the court finds probable cause, and we've talked about this a lot on this show, a preliminary hearing has a different standard of proof than that of trial. At a preliminary hearing, the standard of proof is probable cause. Would a reasonable person believe that a crime was committed and that Chad Daybell may have had something to do with it? Very low standard of proof. After the preliminary hearing, assuming the district attorney presents some evidence to all of the elements of the offense charged, then it gets bound over to the district court for an arraignment. And if the criminal information is filed after the preliminary hearing, that's when the 180 days begins. Now, if Chad Daybell was my client, I would move as expeditiously as possible to get to trial. So that's probably why Mr. Pryor, Chad Daybell's attorney, has filed this motion saying not guilty. And if there's an issue, the courts always try to sway towards the earliest date. And I've talked about this when I've done homicide trials. Most district attorneys don't think that you'll go forward on a first setting on a homicide trial. I do, at least exactly when I can and I'm ready to go. The government is like a big steamroller. It is very slow to get going, but once it does, you don't want to stand in front of it. So, good tactic for the defense, say, hey, not guilty. Let's go do this trial. Let's do it as quickly as possible. We'll see if that works well for Mr. Pryor and Mr. Daybell in these matters. Mr. Pryor has also filed a request for discovery in this case, perfunctory, very routine process in the case. You usually file in every case, basically a motion saying, give me everything. And it's really just to cover your bases, because if something is later turned over that should have been turned over earlier, you can say, I asked for it on this particular date. But everything that's requested in the request for discovery filed on behalf of Chad Daybell is everything that the district attorney would be required to turn over automatically. That includes all documents and tangible objects, reports, examinations, and tests, a list of witnesses, as well as all video or audio recordings that may be in the possession of the district attorney in this particular case. Very standard procedure, but it puts the district attorney on notice. Give me everything that you're required to give me, and that way they can always say they've asked for it officially. In other Chad Daybell news, the East Idaho News has filed a request to videotape and record the proceedings taking first on July 1 and 2. The court has not ruled on that yet, but we will let you know when it does. Very unlikely that the court would reject that particular request, as they've allowed cameras in for all the proceedings to date as it relates to Lori Vallow. That's going to be a good one. I know we'll all be watching. Let's take a quick recess. Have you ever wondered with whom you're getting involved with, if they have a history? Maybe you're not getting that warm, fuzzy feeling that they're not telling you everything you need to know. Everybody can use a detailed background check, all right? And if you go to crimetalksearch.com, you can sign up for such a subscription. It is very inexpensive. You can do unlimited searches, no risk trial. You can search anonymously. That's right. You can search people's names, find out information about them from literally billions of court documents and records throughout this country in a matter of minutes, and do it without anybody knowing whatsoever. You can look at criminal records, bankruptcy records, court records, as well as home values, real estate values. You can do a background check on yourself to make sure everything is accurate, that no one has stolen your identity. Like I said, this is a valuable subscription. It's not a lot of money, and they're trying to help us, so we're asking that you help them. Go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that free subscription. You will be satisfied. Next on the docket, information is being released regarding the officer involved in the death of Rayshard Brooks. Now, I took a lot of heat in some of the comments yesterday when I said, man, 6 months ago, this would be a no-brainer for the Internal Affairs Office. They would simply say it was a good shoot. And what I should have said probably was 24 days ago, prior to George Floyd's death in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this would have been a no-brainer for the Internal Affairs police shoot investigation. They would have said he turned around, Mr. Brooks turned around, pointed something at the officers, and that was sufficient. Now we know from the autopsy that Mr. Brooks was shot in the back, died of basically blood loss as well as damage to organs. What we have seen as the quickness of police misconduct cases moving so quickly is a result of the George Floyd matter. And that's what I meant by my comment. Literally, more than 24 days ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, it doesn't matter. If there was a police officer involved shooting, the matter would be under investigation, more than likely for a year or so. When nobody remembers it, they release a report. The officer's put on administrative leave, and basically he may get a letter of reprimand that goes into his personnel file. Now police officers are being terminated immediately, saying it was an excessive use of force. And in some cases, not in the Atlanta case because there's no charges yet, but the district attorney's office will decide whether charges are warranted in that particular case. But this particular case, Officer Garrett Rolfe, he's 27, and he was the one that was fired after the shooting and the death of Mr. Brooks. Well, it turns out he had a prior excessive use of complaint back in 2017. Now, the significance of that is twofold. One, it was sustained, because let's face it, anybody can call up and make a complaint, and it may be completely baseless. But the police officers, investigating the police officers, determined that it was valid. Second, the fact that the city has turned over this information. I'm telling you, trying to get this information in most jurisdictions is difficult, if not impossible. Here in my state of Colorado, if an officer has a disciplinary action on their record, when they give us a witness list, it has a little asterisk and it says this officer may have something in his past. So they don't just give it to us, we file a subpoena. Then the police officer union shows up and says, you're just on a fishing expedition. You don't know what's in there. You're not entitled to it. And 99% of the time, the judge will look at it and determine it is not relevant to our particular case. Normally, it only gets turned over if there is at issue, particularly if it's an assault on a peace officer case. In those cases, you can get it, but they still fight it tooth and nail. So hopefully this is a good thing that's coming from this, is that these officers' histories are going to be made available to everyone to know. And as we've seen, as it relates to now former police officer in Minneapolis, Mr. Chauvin, he had a long history of issues. Let's face it, if you had somebody in the customer service industry and that was their job to protect and serve and be a good servant to the people that he's serving, and he had all these complaints for basically being dismissive of them and treating them poorly, would you keep that person on after the first, second, third complaint? Probably not, particularly if you found they were in the wrong. I've said this, and you can go back and look at the previous videos. I've said it's the police union that has allowed this to take place. They've set up a way so the police officers basically can never get fired. And who knows, a lot of these police officers, if they're acquitted or found no wrongdoing, may get their jobs back. That is just a reality of the situation that has been set up. But I also have a gripe with judges and district attorneys who give bad cops a pass when they know that their testimony doesn't make any sense, and they know and when the district attorney knows that the cop has some integrity issues, but they go along with it anyway because they think that your client may have greater integrity issues, and they'll take their chance, hoping that the judge believes the police officer, which they do a lot of the time. So hopefully, not only will the cities not tolerate this, but hopefully district attorneys' offices won't do it, and hopefully judges will step up and start calling bad officers, so they know they can't appear in court. And if they can't appear in court, they shouldn't be on a police force. Next on the docket, change is coming to law enforcement. Is this really what people want? Do people really think that we're going to completely disband the police department? Well, everyone says, well, there was this case in Camden, New Jersey where the police were terrible. They disbanded the police department. They rehired several of the police officers, didn't rehire everybody, and there's a good sense of community policing taking place. That is certainly a good thing. Now there are some people saying they want to completely disband the police officers and not give them any money whatsoever, and there'd be no police. There's circumstances now where people say, don't send police officers, send a social worker to a scene. I'm not exactly sure how a social worker showing up on the scene when somebody is beating his wife to a bloody pulp is really going to solve the situation. More than likely, that social worker could get beaten up or assaulted as well. Police are not going away, ladies and gentlemen. What it's going to come down to is whether people understand what the police can do and not do, and whether the police understand what they can do and they cannot do. These people serve the public. They are public servants. They need to be held to a higher standard, just like I have said repeatedly. Whether you're a politician, a police officer, any sort of public figure, you are held to a higher standard, not a lower one because you have a badge or a title. Now, a lot of jurisdictions are coming up with legislation and rules for police. For example, no chokeholds. The mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, has said that now police officers have a duty to report another police officer who uses excessive force. Ooh, welcome to the party. We've already had that law on the books here in Colorado for a long time. Apparently, though, I can't recall of a time where it's ever been enforced. Other states are taking action, and some of these I'm not sure I necessarily agree with. As a criminal defense attorney, say, wow, this is going to be great for my clients. As a member of the community, maybe a little shocked and outraged myself. For example, the New York City Police Department disbanded their plainclothes anti-crime unit. These are the undercover police officers out there basically interacting with the criminal element and basically eliminating that. So there's not going to be controlled buys and arrests of drug dealers and things like that. They're just going to look around and see if there's any police officers in the area. If not, they're going to be given a free pass, so to speak. The mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, is going to review all of their policies. Albuquerque, New Mexico, Mayor Tim Keller said he wants a new department of social workers and civilian professionals to provide services to their residents when a 911 call comes in. And New Jersey Attorney General ordered police to begin divulging names of officers who commit serious disciplinary violations. Now, I'm not really sure why that shouldn't be disclosed anyway. It's public, should be public knowledge and public information. But once again, they've always said it's an employment matter and it should not be disclosed. You can look up your local attorney to see if they have any disbarments or disciplinary proceedings. It's public record for all the world to see. Why can't we have the same thing with our police officers and, well, frankly, politicians as well? And you have to really wonder, a lot of these politicians that are bringing about these changes now, they're going to get in front of it, have been in charge of these cities where a lot of these issues have taken place. Where have they been for the last 20 plus years, 30 plus years? Why all of a sudden now is it a big deal? No one's done a damn thing until now, and everybody wants to say they're out in front leading the charge. Where were they for the last 3 decades? Let me know what you think. Do you think police officers are going away? I frankly like good police officers. I've run into quite a few of them. I've known them. I have partaken time and smoked fine cigars with very worthy police officers, whether federal agents or local police officers. There are good ones, as long as we hold them accountable so that they can get rid of the bad ones as well. Let's take another quick recess. And if you go to crimetalksearch.com/1TAC, you can order the TC1200 tactical flashlight. Because why? What do the good police officers carry? That's right, a bright flashlight. When they go down a dark alley or investigating a burglary somewhere, what do? They light that place up so that they can see everything. And if you get one of these, you would never have any concerns if you are out walking alone at night. If you break down and you need a flashlight to assess the situation or walk to safety, there's a power outage, going camping, this is the flashlight for you. It's extra bright, and if you order now, it's 75% off. Go to crimetalksearch.com/1TAC. Order your flashlight. It makes a great Father's Day gift, and you better order now because Father's Day is rapidly approaching, and who wants to wake up on Father's Day and not have something cool? And dads like cool stuff. Order now. You will be completely satisfied. Next on the docket, a gruesome case from Tallahassee, Florida. The body of Victoria Sims, who's 75, and apparently she was a retired individual, but she volunteered quite a bit. Well, her body, along with another individual named Toyin Salu, who was 19, who had been missing since June 6th, had been found. They discovered these bodies about June 13th at about 9:15 p.m. The bodies were next to each other, and the police had been able to identify a suspect by the name of Aaron Glee, who's 49, who apparently lives nearby. The police had been quiet so far as to whether they suspect that this individual was responsible for both of the slayings. Mr. Glee, who's obviously given the presumption of innocence, had already been arrested twice in recent weeks on assault charges. It was alleged that he had kicked a woman in the stomach and punched a man in the face. Obviously, when anyone is the victim of a homicide, it's unnecessary. But when it's two people who really have no contact with the victim and it's completely random, it makes it even more tragic, and in this particular case, more gruesome. We'll be following this case because two people, and we're not saying that they were out protesting, but in fact, they had been, is apparently this case. So it's unclear whether there's any relation to their activism and their death, but we'll be following the case. Next on the docket, a follow-up on a case that we covered several months ago. And this is involving the case of Marcus Anthony Davis. He is 35, and he wasn't allowed to have a gun because he had been convicted as a felon. And for all of you who do not know, it is a crime, in fact, prohibited under the Constitution, for a prohibited person to possess a firearm if you are, in fact, prohibited to do so. Mr. Davis received a 5-year and 9-month sentence from U.S. District Court Judge Karen Emergut. And this was based upon a joint recommendation for both the prosecutor and the defense attorneys in this particular case. The facts of this case could have made our dumb criminal contestant of the day. And as the United States attorney told the court, quote, "I don't think anything the court can say or the government can say can stop the injuries he gave to himself to stop him from possessing firearms. Hopefully this is the last time that we will see Mr. Davis." And what the United States attorney was referencing was, in this particular case, it was alleged that a bullet went off from the firearm that Mr. Davis was possessing, and a single bullet traveled through the top of his penis, through his right testicle, and into his inner right thigh, and exited through his lower right thigh, according to police reports. Davis, however, being somewhat shocked, claimed that he had been robbed and shot by a white homeless man at a quick convenience store nearby. The police arrived, found no evidence whatsoever of a robbery, and questioned Mr. Davis further. Officers later recovered a gun from Mr. Davis's girlfriend's car, and they believed that that was in fact involved in the shooting. It was a .40 caliber handgun, and it was loaded with 6 bullets, and it also had blood on it and a shell casing stuck in the slide. They also discovered a gunshot hole in a pair of sweatpants found in the car. Apparently, Mr. Davis states that his firearm ultimately accidentally discharged, occurring while he had the gun in his pocket or waistband, according to the sentencing memorandum filed by the defense. Now, Mr. Davis has somewhat lengthy criminal history, and he was on federal supervised release, which is basically parole, from a 2016 conviction for possession with intent to distribute cocaine. He was a member of the Rolling 60s street gang. He also has convictions for assault and attempted murder. Only statement made by Mr. Davis in court was that he intends to be a better role model and example for his 2 children. I can tell you, someone that's handled many cases in federal court, 5 years, 9 months with an individual of this particular criminal history and being on supervised release is a gift. More than likely, he would have been closer to 10 years. Mr. Davis should be thanking not only his attorney, the United States attorney, and the judge for going along with their recommendation. Next on the docket, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Now, for those of you who may have seen some of the advertisements for that White Claw drink, their slogan is, "Ain't no laws when drinking claws." Well, that may be the defense that a Nebraska man attempts to use in his defense. Matthew Stinson, 36, was apparently contacted by police on Sunday afternoon after he threatened to kill multiple times a worker in a hotel lobby in Lincoln, Nebraska. It is alleged that Mr. Stinson was holding a knife while he was threatening to murder the hotel clerk. Once the police arrived, an attempt was made to contact him. Mr. Stinson then tossed a can of the popular hard seltzer at cops, who sought to collar him for the arrest. Mr. Stinson was ultimately located some 6 hours later and charged with resisting arrest, use of a deadly weapon to commit a felony, making terroristic threats. Mr. Stinson remains in custody in lieu of posting his $20,000 bond. As we've said lots of times, our dumb criminal contestant of the day gives us an opportunity to present a teachable moment. Mr. Stinson should not throw things at people. Mr. Stinson should not threaten people, particularly hotel workers who can pick up the phone and call the police. And once the police arrive, it's usually not in your best interest to throw things at them. And it sounds like these officers exercised great restraint in arresting Mr. Stinson unharmed. And yes, the laws do apply when you're drinking the Claw. That's all we have for you right now. We will go live this evening at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We will be on YouTube as well as Facebook. And shortly after we go live, we will go to our Patreon members. So if you're not a Patreon, please sign up beforehand so that you can receive the link to know where to go for our further discussion. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you tonight on Crime Talk.